Assalamu alaikum. In a lesson yesterday, we discussed social mobility. We discussed different perspectives on social mobility. We discussed different types of social mobility. And today, I'd like to discuss. I had a couple of questions in my mind, but I'm not sure if time allows me to be able to discuss more than one. Now, the question that we have in front of us is we had this in the CIs in May, June 2024, variant 3.3. For Pakistan, Pakistan is comes under zone 4 and we sit for the 3-2 paper. You all would be aware of that. Now, this question, why is it that we're discussing this question? This what by using this question as an example, I'd want to give you a tiny little idea about how we should work towards writing, how we should start writing answers. And remember, as I say, sociology being a theoretical subject, the more you read, the better understanding you have. The more you write, the better chances you have of getting a decent grade. And of course, along with practice, the more you practice in a disciplined, consistent manner, the more likely there are that, inshallah, you'd be able to get your grade. So without any further ado, let's start off with this question. The question over here reads, evaluate the view that education enables working class children to achieve social mobility. Evaluate the view that education enables working class children to achieve social mobility. This is the statement. The statement is education enables working class children to achieve social mobility. Now for this particular, I didn't record, my bad. Astaghfirullah. No, it is recording. It is recording. It is recording. Yeah, it is recording. Let's continue. So, yeah, evaluate the view that education enables working class children to achieve social mobility. So the statement over here is education enabling working class children to be able to achieve social mobility. Uh, we are expected to write in support of this. We're expected to write against this as well. Of course, because this happens to be just the second topic. The first topic that we have covered was theories about the role of education, and the second one is the relationship between education and social mobility. There are many other topics that are that come after this as well. And while we'd be reading through this marking scheme, while we'd be discussing this marking scheme, we need to understand that there are certain topics that we still yet have to cover. Now, right after this, we'd do a topic that is about the relationship between, the name of the topic is influence on the curriculum, the relationship between how the curriculum that you are taught, formal or otherwise, it is designed by someone out there, and how it is a social construction, how this entire idea of knowledge is a social construction. And then we would move on to the second part. We have the different factors that affect the education attainment of pupils, from ranging from intelligence to social class to ethnicity, and towards the end, the last factor that we study is gender. So just be aware that you might not be able to comprehend this entire marking scheme. Nonetheless, I believe we have covered enough so far for you to be able to write a decent answer for this particular question that we have in front of us. So the statement again is education enables working class children to achieve social mobility. In support of the view, you could write down about the extent to which now see, when you talk about a particular marking scheme, if we have a particular marking scheme in front of us, know that this is just indicative content, and it must be written over here somewhere. See, the above content is indicative, and other relevant approaches to the question should be rewarded appropriately. So it's not an absolute, it's not something that has to be there. This is just one way through which you could answer this question. And along with this, there are other ways that are there as well. So from the information, from the content that we have in front of us, we just pick up on what we've already studied. And then amongst that, we'd see what particular point to choose so that we're able to write a 26 mark answer. So an increase in intergenerational and intragenerational social mobility. Yes, mentioning intergenerational and intragenerational social mobility, of course, shows the examiner that you're aware or you have some sociological knowledge, and you can very clearly distinguish between distinguish between mobility being measured between two different generations, or uh, mobility being measured uh, uh, on a single individual over the course of time. Now, what's important I want you all to understand at this point is this second point to begin with. Now, this says functionalist view of meritocracy to ensure efficient role allocation, Davis and Moore. Now, know that before we started off with this particular topic, that is the relationship between education and social mobility, we had a uh, we had a detailed discussion on the relationship between education and meritocracy, where I kept on telling you that most of the content that you come across, that you see over here, is the content that you've already studied while discussing the theories. Know that for A2, for A2s more specifically, you need to know your theories really well. Not only do you need to know your theories, but God forbid, imagine you cannot really think of anything while writing an answer. These perspectives, or this strong grip that you have on perspectives, would, of course, be a plus point that would help you gain marks easily. Now, this particular point that I've highlighted over here in yellow is something that you studied right at the beginning. When we had started off with the functionist perspective, if you remember, we had spoken about Durkheim, and then we spoke about Parsons, followed by Davis and Moore. Your knowledge on that is important. Number two, when we were discussing meritocracy prior to when we started social mobility, even then we had discussed this particular sociological reference put forward by Davis and Moore. Now, to give you a quick little recap on this, functionalist sociologists such as Davis and Moore, they claimed that the education system, one of the major roles of the education system is allocation of roles to individuals, or allocation of roles to pupils on the basis of the talent they possess, on the basis of the skills that they're able to demonstrate, and on the basis of the amount of efforts they put in, right? And we were collectively using the word meritocracy for that. According to Davis and Moore, the education system is an institution, is a mechanism that sifts, sorts, grades individuals on the basis of the talent they possess. And based on that, and based on the grading system through competitive examinations, they are uh, accredited with the academic qualification. And these academic qualifications are a prerequisite to the jobs that they're allocated to in their life ahead. So if we try connecting dots here, we are, even when we had started doing this, when we had initially discussed Davis and Moore, at that particular time, this might not have occurred to us. But at this point, if we start connecting dots, this eventually is related to social mobility, or this eventually can be related to social mobility without going wrong. So Davis and Moore claim the education system sifts, sorts, grades individuals on the basis of the amount of talent they have, they possess, the amount of skills they demonstrate, and the amount of efforts they put in, right? Which decides, or which is a mechanism through which we decide what particular individual, what should be given, what particular role should an individual be given. Of course, there are some jobs, there are some roles within a society that are considered to be more important than the rest. And the individuals who would perform better through examinations would stand a better chance of experiencing social mobility. So, linking this particular point with the statement that we have above that says education enables working class children to achieve social mobility, this is how you could turn this into a paragraph. One. Number two, Parsons on universalistic and achieved status. Now, again, to reiterate, I knew this was there, and there's this another question that is similar to this, and you see that the marking schemes are very similar. You'd see how the content that you studied while discussing the relationship between education and meritocracy has been applied over here, and it can be and should be effectively applied. Number two, Parsons on universalistic norms and achieved status. Now, if you recall Parsons, who's again a functionist, according to Parsons, the education system focuses on values, and the two major values that the education system tries instilling in individuals. The first one was the value of achievement, and the second one was the value of equality of opportunity. As we speak about the value of equality of opportunity here, according to Parsons, unlike closed societies, unlike tribal societies, unlike small scale societies, modern digital societies today, more developed parts of the world today, they operate on the principles of universalistic values. Universalistic values and not particularistic values. Now, what is the difference between particularistic values versus universalistic values? At home, if you recall, I'd give you an example. At home, you treat it in a very particular manner. For instance, if you're the youngest child, your parents might be showing more of love, and or vice versa. And however, and as you step into the education system the education system apparently treats everyone in a very universalistic manner, according to the functions perspective, at least, according to Parsons, at least. There are the same norms, values, rules, regulations, protocols, do's and don'ts that an individual within the education system is expected to be following. And uh, when we talk about Parsons' take on these universalistic norms that are there in the education system, we're actually we'd actually be able to link this to how these universalistic norms that individuals are instilled in through the education system. A this is a hidden lesson for them, that tomorrow, as they step into the market, as they step into the professional life, it's the same rules and regulations, it's the same level of competency that is required by different organizations, and the amount of efforts they put in would result in where they would land and how the future would be. Likewise, Parsons on universalistic norms and achieved status, the distinction between achieved status and ascribed status. If you remember, according to Talcott Parsons, modern digital societies, they operate on the principles of achievement and not ascription. Ascribed status is a status that you get on birth. Achieved status is what you work for. So both Davis and Moore and Parsons, I understand they're both functionalists. They agree to the idea that the education system does have a vital role to play when it comes to helping individuals from the working class achieve social mobility. Remember, Beta, you expected to, or you should. See, bringing in clarity in terms of what you're writing is your responsibility. You're all marked, graded on the basis of what the script has to. Your script is represent your script demonstrates how well prepared you are. So bringing in clarity, as I say, is your responsibility, and linking it with the question again is something that is expected of you. Next, evidence of working class achievement. Now, as we speak about evidence of working class achievement over here, we could speak about the, I mean, if you want to, you could bring in Oxford social mobility. Remember, according to the Oxford social mobility, yes, there were changes. Let's ignore the fact that the changes that the Oxford social mobility, the let's ignore the fact that the changes that the Oxford social mobility could find were more of an absolute nature, were more of a short range than a long range. Now, a distinction between short range and long range social mobility. Short range social mobility is when you're taking a step when you're just taking a step above, when you're just getting a little better. For instance, for instance, from a manual worker, you turn into a semi-skilled worker and then a skilled worker, right? And not long range mobility, that is from a skilled worker, maybe you turn into a manager. So according to this particular point that we have over here, evidence of working class achievement. You could also discuss how there's been an occupations, how there's been a structural change that is more in line with the occupation, also referred to as structural mobility. If I may give you another example that would help you understand this better, when I use the word structural mobility, I'm talking about how there now is more of automation, how there is more of machinery, and the individuals who were into unskilled work have had to adapt to some or the other skill, or individuals from the manufacturing industry had to move to the tertiary industry because automation stepped in. There were lesser people, automation stepped in, and deindustrialization, where lesser and lesser people were required to work at factories and industries because of automation and machines. So along these lines, the next one, policies such as compensatory education, increasing equal opportunities. Now, this is something that you haven't studied as yet, but I would share a file with you right after this class ends that would give you a better opportunity, that would give you a better chance to understand what this is. Meanwhile, I'll try to guide you through with this point as well. Now, policies such as compensatory education, increasing equal opportunities, uh, based on the idea that individuals from the working class, based on the idea that individuals from the working class do not do well, based on the idea that individuals from the working class, academically and otherwise, and when I use the word otherwise over here, I'm talking about the cultural aspects, the cultural factors that have been giving individuals from the upper class and upper edge, and how they keep on doing better as compared to the working class. As we speak about compensatory education, there are certain initiatives. There have been certain initiatives that have been taken by the government through different educational reforms, through different educational policies, with the apparent intention of providing everyone with the same opportunity. Now, there are some policies. You might as well want to Google them down or use ChatGPT, whatever works for you. Some compensatory programs such as Short Start Scheme, such as the EPA, that is education priority areas. Short Start Scheme, as the name suggests, earlier on, before a child even starts school, you help them with you help them get what individuals from the middle and the upper class have. And this, of course, is a plus point. And this, of course, would help individuals from the working class get to the position or be in par with individuals from the middle class, which again is done with the intention of helping individuals from the working class. Now, allow me a minute, please. Just allow me a minute. Along with the Sure Start scheme, there are other initiatives that the British government has also taken. For instance, EPA, that is education priority areas. There were some areas that were marked to be education priority areas, where the government had decided to allocate more of funds to help facilitate individuals from the working class background. And so is the case with education action zones. You could read all of them and built up a paragraph in support of the idea, right? Now, see, the way I see it, nothing goes wrong in sociology as long as you know how to use your words well, as long as you have some sociological knowledge and insight, and you know how to write your answers. So if I speak about these compensatory programs, they were initiated with the intention of facilitating working class individuals through the education system so that they end up performing, or they end up doing better. I hope this is understood. And next, another point that we have in support of this idea is increase in qualifications at all levels. And over here, we could pick up some content from you could pick up some content from the internet as well. The DFE statistics, as this suggests, DFE is Department for Education Statistics, where you'd see that there's been an increase in qualifications at all levels. Uh, ignoring the fact for now, ignoring the fact. Okay, I'm ignoring it just right now because uh, I'm trying to get hold of data that helps me write uh, better in terms of that helps me write an answer. No, I'm looking for content over here that helps me support the idea that the working class has been facilitated through the education system so that they could experience upward social mobility, right? So increase in qualification at all levels. The point I was trying to remind you of, which I had said you need to ignore while writing this particular part, was how, according to Brown, this has led to credential inflation, how there are more and more of qualified workforce. There are more and more of qualified people that are out there in the market, which again, if you see it the way you want to see it, in support of the idea that the working class works towards improving the working, no, 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 the education system works towards improving or helping improve the working class, you could say that there has been, if you have a look at the statistics, you see there are more of graduates than there were 10 years back, 20 years back, so on and so forth. Now, there's some research evidence that you could possibly use. Like I said, DFE statistics, you could write down about these DFE statistics. You could write down about DFE's Department for Education Statistics from UK. You could write down about how you could write down about Goldthorpe, the Oxford Mobility Study. You could write down about Chitty. You could write down about Heath, and you could write down about Saunders. This file that I'd sent you, that is already there on your WhatsApp group, that primarily revolves around the course book, the blue book. All you have to do is open that file, click on search, and then you'd come across these references from there. I'd see if I could help you with them. So yeah, I can't really see it here, but that's fine. You could write down in support of this, or I think not sure if I have enough of time to be able to do that, but I'll try to help you. So you can write down about the Department of I'm just trying to show you. Is this a sample answer? No, I don't believe in sample answers. I mean, I'd kill your potential if I start talking about sample answers over here. I don't want to do that. At least that's not how I like working. So somewhere along these lines, one way to support the view that education enables working class children to achieve social mobility is through statistical evidence showing. Now, this is when you're making a point, okay? You're showing the examiner that you're trying to demonstrate that you would demonstrate that you intend on demonstrating that by providing statistical evidence, showing improvements in attainment. Over recent decades, see, you have not exactly mentioned a year, yet you've shown the examiner that you know what you're up to, you know what you're talking about. Over recent decades, more working class children have stayed in education longer and achieved higher qualifications, which can act as a springboard into better jobs and upward mobility. Keep the reader engaged. Know the reader that the reader is not simply reading a paragraph from the book, but the reader is reading, and the reader, as in the examiner over here, is reading an answer to a question. Try keeping the content you're writing connected or linked, or make sure that it's always in line with the initial statement that you had. So the Department for Education has reported a steady increase in GCSE and A-level attainment rates, and more working class students are entering higher education than in the past. These statistics highlight how education provides real opportunities for those from disadvantaged backgrounds to improve their life chances. Although inequalities remain, the data that shows education has been a significant driver of mobility, with qualifications opening up access to opportunities, sorry, with qualifications opening up access to occupations previously dominated by the middle class. In this sense, now this is the closure line. I am really a big fan of this. Not every student is able to do this, which is fine too. In this sense, the Department for Education evidence strongly supports the idea that education can act as a leveler and enable working class children to climb the social ladder. Likewise, you could put the knowledge you've gained from Goldthorpe and Oxford Social Mobility to the right use as well. Another point so you could take a screenshot if you feel like. Another point, let me reiterate, this is not a sample answer. This is not even an answer. This is just a way. I'm just trying to use this to help you understand how you could level up your writing skills. And yes, this is not the best. Of course, with the right amount of efforts in the right direction, you could do a better job than this. So another point in favor of education enabling mobility is that social change and educational expansion have worked together to improve opportunities. Now, this is the point. Goldthorpe et al. Goldthorpe et al.'s Oxford Mobility Study found that Britain experienced an increase in upward mobility in the post-war period, with more working-class individuals moving into white-collar and professional jobs. While much of this was due to structural changes, structural mobility, as I was referring to it as. In the labor market, education played a vital role in providing the qualifications needed to access these new roles. For instance, as the economy shifted away from manual labor, working class children who achieved academic success were able to move into emerging sectors such as clerical work. Remember, shift from uh, the manufacturing industry to the tertiary industry and management. This shows that education acts as a bridge between structural changes in society and individual opportunities, allowing working class students to take advantage of new opportunities in the labor market. Goldthorpe's findings therefore suggest that education has been a crucial mechanism through which mobility has been achieved. So you're letting the examiner know that you have knowledge on the Oxford Mobility Study. You know that this Oxford Mobility Study was an initiative by, I mean, if you talk about the significant uh, individuals there, it was Goldthorpe who came up with this idea. And you're showing the examiner that whatever the content is that you're writing is in line and is in relation to that particular statement that we had right at the top. Next, you could also write down about JITI, educational policy and expanded opportunities. Educational policies have always played an important role in enabling social mobility. So this is the point you're making here. Successive governments have introduced initiatives aimed at increasing equality of opportunity. I mean, you could write down about the tripartite system as well. And then, of course, when we'd be talking about the flip side of the argument, which many students also refer to as the antithesis or the against side of the statement, you could scrutinize how well it did or it did not, uh, how well did the tripartite system work or not. So from comprehensive systems in the 1960s, we study all of this to compensatory policies like the Sure Start scheme in the 2000s. JITI in 2004 highlights how reforms expanding access to education created more of opportunities for disadvantaged children to achieve. For example, the introduction of comprehensive schools allowed working class students to remain in education longer and gain qualifications that were previously reserved for those in selective schools. That is, okay, just a quick little spoiler here. Remember, in 1944, there was this tripartite system that was introduced, and this tripartite system, based on the results from the 11 plus exam, was sending children to different schools. Academically able students were sent to grammar schools, and then the technically able students were sent to technical schools, and the less academically able students were sent to the secondary modern schools. Uh, this was replaced by comprehensive schools where every child studied everything. Now, the simple way through which you could understand this is, I mean, what you're studying is an example of comprehensive education. So, for example, the introduction of comprehensive schools allowed working class students to remain in education longer and gain qualifications that were previously reserved for those in selective schools. Similarly, policies that expanded access to higher education opened the doors to working class participation in university. Chitty's observations support the claim that education has been instrumental in widening opportunities for mobility, showing that state policies have actively sought to break down barriers faced by working class children. This demonstrates how policy intervention through education can create pathways for social advancement. Likewise, you could write down about Heath. Education can also be seen as a means of reducing inequalities by offering working class children the chance to compete on more equal terms with the middle class counterparts. Heath's research on class and attainment shows that when working class students achieve qualifications similar to the middle class counterparts, they often succeed in improving their occupational prospects. And improving your occupational prospects over here is referring to the extent to which you're experiencing upward social mobility, going up the social ladder. For example, Heath found that second generation working class and minority students who performed well educationally were able to secure upward mobility, demonstrating the transformative power of education. While Heath acknowledged persistent inequalities in outcomes, his work highlights the positive role of qualifications in overcoming class disadvantages. For working class children, education thus offers a route to access higher status jobs, break the cycle of disadvantage, and gain intergenerational mobility. This supports the claim that education provides a ladder for advancement, even if not all the barriers are fully removed. Likewise, Peter Saunders, highly controversial, where Peter Saunders very openly takes sides with the middle class, where he claims that the middle class, statistically speaking, if they're doing well, it doesn't at all have to mean that the working class have not been given equal amount of opportunities. So finally, Peter Saunders can be no. Finally, education can be defined as a fair system that rewards ability and effort, giving working class children the chance to succeed. Peter Saunders argues that Britain is a meritocratic society where educational achievement is the main route to occupational success. According to him, differences in class outcome are primarily the result of differences in individual talent and effort rather than unfair structural barriers. So he's pretty much in support of the idea that the education system does work towards bringing in the education system does work towards allowing the working class individuals experience upward social mobility. From this particular perspective, education enables upward mobility by identifying and rewarding the most able students, regardless of their background. Working class children who work hard and achieve qualifications can therefore rise into higher classes, supported by the idea that society values merit over ascription. Saunders' defense of meritocracy provides a strong argument in support of the claim, suggesting that education does genuinely provide working class children with opportunities to achieve mobility through their own abilities. Now, like I said, you could take screenshots of this. Please don't ask me to send screenshots. If one of you has done that, you might as well send it on the group if you want to. Getting back to this question. So this was the question here. One side of the argument, let's read the statement again. The statement is education enables working class children to achieve social mobility. In support of the idea, what I have seen is many students struggle with writing in support of the idea that education does help individuals from the working class background experience social mobility. Now, against this idea, there's a lot that you could write from the content that you've studied so far, and also the content that we'd study ahead. Since we've just covered two topics, the first one being the theories about the role of education, and the second one being the relationship between an education and social mobility, there's a lot more that you could write over here. For instance, there's limited intergenerational mobility. Of course, you could talk about how there is more of how there's more of relative mobility than I'm sorry, how there's more of absolute mobility than relative mobility. You could bring in that point too. Marxist view that education is designed to prepare labor force for capitalism. We've studied this perspective in detail. The idea of myth of meritocracy, you could bring in Bowles and Gintis over here. Bourdieu's argument that cultural capital is required for education, for success in education, that you could write down about that. You could write down about how Brown saw that it wasn't just education. We studied Brown in detail as well. Material deprivation limits opportunity in education. So I've written an essay why that is not studied as yet, because even when you get what this is, but this is a separate independent topic in itself. It's a subtopic when you talk about the relationship between social class and educational attainment. So this yet has to be covered. Next, you could write down about how policies such as marketization limit working class access to opportunity. You've studied this. We've studied this all in detail. You could write down how the neoliberal approach advocates and encourages competition, free market economy, which on one end does show that this could lead to an improvement in the education system. But guess what? It doesn't lead to an equal amount of opportunity for working class individuals. Yes, there are better schools. Yes, there are fancier schools. Yes, there are amazing institutions, but the accessibility that working class individuals have to for those institutions, it's close to none. Likewise, some policies that are designed to support social mobility may have opposite effect. Example, grammar schools. This is what I was explaining you. Now, tripartite system was apparently uh, introduced to bring inequality to an end, or if not being able to bring it to an end, to reduce the amount of inequality within the education system. And that is why children from different social classes, different genders, different ethnic origins, they all had to sit for the same examination. I just explained this 10 minutes ago. However, if we talk about the results, the impact the tripartite system had wasn't very favorable, because it was seen that it was the kids from the middle and the upper class background. It was the kids from the middle and the upper class background who kept on dominating grammar schools, and the working class students, in an unintentionally systematic manner, kept on going for secondary modern schools, and they kept on being a part of vocational education. So yes, the government does take initiatives. Let's not uh, doubt their intent. But then again, did things work out the way they claimed it would work out? Statistics show that they did not. Likewise, ethnic and gender disadvantages reinforced by class position. This is a part that we have, let me just again write, not studied as yet. I mean, even when you can write down about this, but I think there's a lot that you'd be able to write through this once we're done with this particular topic. So there are some research evidence or theories. The ones highlighted in blue, the title page of the course book is blue, and the ones highlighted in purple is from the student book. There are so many references. These references we've already studied. These you haven't as yet, but you could always Google them and figure them out. And if you speak about relevant concepts, we have studied in support of the idea. You could write down about competition, meritocracy, compensatory education. Against the idea, you could write down about marketization, cultural capital, marketization, neoliberal approach, cultural capital, Bourdieu, ideological state apparatus, Althusser. Yes, cultural deprivation, material deprivation is something that we haven't covered as yet. So what do I expect from you all? I expect you all to write a 26-mark answer, around 1,000 words. 4 paragraphs in support, 4 against. Try using block paragraphs. Please use block paragraph. That brings in clarity. Try writing your answer divided into 10 paragraphs, the first one being an introduction, the next 4 points in support of the statement, followed by the next 4 points in against the statement, and a fancy conclusion. Yeah, give it a shot, give it a try. There's no harm giving it a try. And let's see what this leads to, and hopefully it would turn into a favorable outcome that is just a step closer towards you writing better answers. Know that your first answer can never be your best answer. To get to your best answer, you need to get started with the first. So having said that, I think yeah, the time is already up and I'm already late for my next class. So yeah, let's call it a day. Take good care of yourselves, and yeah, thank you.